We are recording in progress. All right, so we're gonna try to do the quick introductions with who is online and Alika. Okay, well, before we do that, Alika's gonna tell us how we can participate today. Alika Changizi, who is one of the managers on the active transportation program, she's running things for us today. So she's going to tell us how we can participate, and I would like to know who's on, because I want to be sure that we've gotten our the important people we need on this work group discussion. So Alika's gonna try to run introductions for us too. So Alika.
Thanks, Lori. Good afternoon, everyone. So in terms of participation for this working group today, please utilize the raise hand feature if you would like to voice any comments or questions to the group. If you would prefer someone read those comments or questions on your behalf, you can utilize either the webinar chat, which is enabled for everyone's use, or you can utilize the Q&A tab instead. If you're having any sort of technical issues, please reach out to me either through this webinar or through email. I'll be able to assist you and help you voice any sort of comments that you have to the group. For introductions, I'm gonna do my best here. So what I'll do is I'll start off with some of the folks that I know. If you could then help me introduce your staff that is also on the call. That way we're at least keeping within an agency as we go through introductions. So starting off, I wanted to start with Shelley Kwan. Could you go ahead and start and then introduce the remainder of your staff?
Hi, I'm Shelley with LA Metro, and I assume the other Metro person on the call that I know of is Cindy Cho, and we both work on active transportation program activities. And I also forwarded this to our grants management team, and I'm not sure if they're on there. So I'll ask if they are on there to raise their hands so they can introduce themselves.
Diego, go ahead.
Good afternoon. My name is Diego Mears, and I work for the grants department at Metro.
Perfect. Anyone else from LA Metro?
This is Nathan Maddox from LA Metro, Grants Management Oversight.
Thank you. Tyrone?
Hey everyone, Tyrone Crump with Grants Management and Oversight.
Thank you all. Okay, let's see. Louis Sal, do you want to go ahead and start for your agency?
Sure. This is Louis Stroud, Program and Grants Development Manager at OCTA. I have with me Vic Morales. I think Adrian Cardoso is also on as well.
Any other OCTA staff? You guys can
Yeah.
raise your hand. That might be easier.
Yeah, that'd be easy. We can't see the attendee list. I'm sorry.
Oh, okay. No worries. Okay, not seeing any other folks raise their hand. Thanks, Louis. Okay, Jenny Chan.
Good afternoon, Jenny Chan from Riverside County Transportation Commission, Planning and Programming Manager.
Thank you, Jenny.
And yeah, I don't believe anyone else is on today. It's just me.
Okay. Let's see. Okay, I'm just gonna go in order. Candace, do you want to go ahead and introduce yourself?
Hi, everyone. This is Candace Vanderhyde with the City of Lancaster.
Any other City of Lancaster staff, please raise your hand. Okay. Brandon Wilson.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Brandon Wilson. I'm the Senior Director of Transportation Infrastructure Projects in the Los Angeles Mayor's Office. I don't believe there are any other Mayor's Office staff on this call today.
Great, thank you, Brandon. Okay, Diane.
Good afternoon. This is Diane Overland, and I'm with LADOT, City of Los Angeles.
Any other LADOT staff, please raise your hand. Marco, go ahead.
Good afternoon, everyone. This is Marco Arroyo, Senior Transportation Engineer, LADOT Complete Streets Implementation.
George. Did anyone get that? I'm sorry, George. Your audio was a bit muffled.
George, I think there's an issue with the connection. We're hearing you talk, but it is very inaudible, so it might be worth trying to leave the meeting and rejoin.
I'm seeing, oh. Thanks, George.
I was hoping George does normally sound like that. Let's work your day.
Okay, Hal.
Good afternoon, everyone. This is Hal Ghaffari. I'm Assistant City Engineer, City of Diamond Bar. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other Diamond Bar staff, please raise your hand.
I don't believe anybody else from our
Okay,
city. Yeah,
great, thank you. George, go ahead.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Oh, okay, sorry about that. George Huang from the City of LA, Bureau of Engineering. I'm the Senior Engineer in the Street Improvement Division.
Thank you. Any other City of LA staff? Oh, quite a few. Perfect. Okay, go ahead.
Hello, everyone. Marcelino Asensio with the Bureau of Engineering Architecture Division. Oversee active transportation projects that the city or Bureau of Engineering implements.
Mike Affelt with Bureau of Engineering, Los Angeles River Revitalization Coordinator. I'm not sure, there might be other city staffers. Thank you.
Prashant.
Yeah, good afternoon, everyone. Prashant Konareddy with the City of Los Angeles Bureau of Street Services. So we have a couple of few active transportation projects. So I think I'm the only one, I guess, from Bureau today.
Thank you. Is there anyone that I'm missing? I haven't called on. Can you please raise your hand? Okay. Talon, go ahead.
Good afternoon. My name is Talin Shapazian with City of Pasadena Department of Transportation.
Thank you. Any other members I haven't called on? Did we get through everyone? Kevin, go ahead.
Yes, Kevin Lai with the San Gabriel Valley Council of the Government, Director of Capital Project. Thank you.
Thank you, Kevin. Anyone else that hasn't introduced themselves? Okay, it appears as though we've gotten through everyone.
Okay. So thank you, Alika. And Alika, you said if they wanted to make a comment, raise their hands. That's how we're doing it. And then
Yeah,
you-
raise their hand or they can enter something in the chat. But if you are raising your hand, please just make sure to introduce yourself again and your agency to make things easier for commission staff.
Okay, thank you. Okay, let's go to the next slide. And thank you for going through the introductions. We wanted to make sure that we had good coverage in Southern California, so thank you for doing that. Okay, so I told you that we had developed a draft policy as our starting place, but for ease of discussion on this work group meeting, we put it into a PowerPoint, so it's easier for people to digest what we plan on putting in the policy and things that sections of it that we want to hear from you. So the first part is just kind of an intro that the reason that we're doing this policy is because the governor proclaimed a state of emergency in Los Angeles and Ventura counties because of the following fires. And then also just note that we can amend this interim policy if we need to if we hold a work group. So that's just what will be in the intro. Any comments here?
We did get one comment in the chat stating that it's a little difficult to hear the audio in the room.
Oh, okay. Sorry, can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you clearly. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, they're saying it's better now.
Okay. Okay.
No other comments.
Okay, let's go to the next slide then. Okay, so the next part of the policy will discuss the scope of the policy. And it will pertain to the following programs: the active transportation program, the local partnership program, solutions for congested corridors program, and the trade corridor enhancement program. This policy will not apply to the state transportation improvement program or the STIP because the timely use of funds policies for the STIP are in statute. So we would need some kind of statute change to change that, which we just will deal with what we can. So any comments there? Okay, so the other part of the scope is who will be participating in this interim timely use of funds policy. And we had initially planned on including agencies within Los Angeles County and Ventura counties because those were the counties specifically called out in the governor's emergency proclamation. However, we did hear that some other counties, namely Orange County, San Bernardino County, and Riverside County, could need to also utilize this policy. So our first main discussion point here really is who should be included and why. We just want to hear from you why you think, so definitely Los Angeles counties and Ventura counties will be included, but we'd like to hear from anyone else outside of there, what issues you're facing and why you think it would be a good idea for you to be included in this policy as well. I see Louis.
Louis, OCT, I had a more of a clarifying question because this
Okay.
sounds like this is more so focused on the recent Palisades and Eaton fire. But when we're talking about recent fires, were we considering any of the bridge, airport, and I think there's a third fire. I mean, it's skipping my mind. The one in Big Bear, it's in San Bernardino. Were those considered as part of this discussion?
We did not at this point have those included on our list of fires.
Okay.
Which ones did you say, Louis?
So the late 24 fires, so airport fire, which that was Orange County into Riverside County. I think the bridge fire, and there was one other fire that was in San Bernardino in San Bernardino County, and those are pretty massive fires too that recently happened within the last what eight months or so.
Was there
line fire? That was the other one. Bridge, line, airport. Those
Okay.
three.
Louis, was there a governor's state of emergency proclamation or anything like that?
I believe so.
Okay.
I believe there was. Because those three fires alone were pretty large. I think airport itself was almost 24,000 acres.
Okay.
And that burned through all of the Cleveland National Forest into Riverside, and it took out, they shut down the 74.
Okay. Louis, are you suggesting that we should include those fires also in this policy?
If there is support for it,
Okay.
yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
We did receive one comment from Jenny Chan. She said Riverside County would like to be considered for the policy because the fires impacted the workload of SCE workers and impacting the responsiveness of SCE staff on projects in Riverside County.
So SCE is Southern California Edison, Jenny, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, so Jenny is saying that Southern California Edison, which serves a large part of the area in Southern California, their workload was affected in general, which is affecting projects outside of Los Angeles and Ventura. Is that, Jenny, would you say I said that back the way you were thinking?
She said, yes, that's perfect.
Okay.
Can I maybe?
Yeah, Matthew has a comment.
Thanks,
You have to
Jenny.
raise your hand.
Thanks for that, Jenny. I think I'll say with maybe a little bit added context. Obviously the fires in Los Angeles County and Ventura County at the start of the calendar year, I think were the premise for the commission deciding that we needed to consider an interim timely use of funds policy for projects very similar to when we had a COVID interim timely use of funds policy. And as Lori mentioned, we absolutely want to be considering impacts that surrounding counties are facing. And so here's my question, Jenny, because we have heard that it is primarily Southern California Edison that operates and functions through the greater Southern California region. Would you be able to qualify, just to put it into perspective for us here at the commission, what some of the challenges that Riverside and maybe some of your neighboring counties are experiencing due to, we don't have to tie it directly back to Palisades and Eaton Fire, but just any wildfires in Southern California in general, because we know that when Southern California Edison operations are disrupted, that's a very key partner in delivering projects that have, you know, any work that has to do with utilities. You know, delays with Southern California Edison would potentially exacerbate impacts further along in project delivery. And so one of the purposes of today's discussion was also to ask you all who represent the region and the county and the cities that have been impacted to qualify maybe with an example or two of what those impacts are. Because as we take this discussion back, we obviously are considering additional time for delivering phases that have commission programming on them. But we know we will be asked to justify and kind of demonstrate how some of those impacts are actually realized in the real world. And that's why we wanted all of you here, because you're our eyes and ears down in Southern California. So Jenny, I see your hand raised. I know I said a lot, but for anyone who can provide some of the examples with Southern California Edison, I think we would be happy to hear it.
Okay. Hi, Matthew. I would be happy to provide staff a lot of details and specific situations that we're seeing on our end. I'll have to work with my right-of-way manager on our current projects to get you some examples to help you quantify, you know, this situation and make it easy for you guys to make the ask to, you know, include Riverside County in this policy.
Certainly, and I want to be very sensitive. It's not that there's anyone on this end who is not on board with including additional counties. I think it's just like you said, it gives us a bit more justification so that we're confident when we take this to commissioners and ask for their approval of this interim time and use of funds policy. So I appreciate that, Jenny.
Okay, thank you, Jenny. Anyone else, Alika, that has comments on this?
I haven't seen any other comments or hands raised come in.
Okay. Okay, then we will keep moving. Okay, so we talked about the intro to the policy and the scope of the policy. And now these are the specific provisions that we plan to include based on the feedback that we hear today. So we want to establish a policy because it helps everyone have some sort of rules to follow, us, the agencies, and Caltrans, because Caltrans will be processing the requests like normal. However, if there are projects that still need something else, they're falling outside this policy, they are particularly impacted by the fires, we will consider those on a case-by-case basis. So does everybody understand that? Assuming everybody in here understands? Okay, and then next, that the time extension requests under this interim policy must be submitted directly to Caltrans for processing. Now, this is just like normal, so you'll just submit everything to Caltrans in the same way that you do now. Louis?
Yeah, just clarification.
Yeah.
When you mean individual project concerns, so there won't be a blanket like approval, right? If I'm trying to think of like scenarios, right? If we're talking about something directly within within the area of the Palisades and say Eaton Fire, you would just say yes, and then anything outside of that periphery, you would have to look at it case by case basis. Am I getting that right?
I think maybe backwards, but I'm not sure. Let me explain that again. So
Yeah. Okay.
we'll have provisions that will apply to any areas that we include within the scope, and which we already talked about. And then, so those ones will be automatic. And then if there are really critical issues somehow on a project, we will consider those on a case by case. So there will be some automatic. Does that make sense, Louis?
Yeah. Yeah. Got it. Thank you.
Okay. Okay. Anything else? Yeah, Alika?
Not seeing anything else come in.
Okay. Okay, so, we'll still follow the same process as we do now with time extensions. And then this last bullet, allocation and timely use of funds requirements outlined in each program's guidelines are applicable for requests made under this interim policy. What this means is that all of the normal things that you have to do when you request an allocation, or you still have to do. You still have to have your environmental done, you have to have your right of way done if you want construction, all of those things. None of that is superseded. It's just, we're just gonna change modify the timely use of funds timelines a bit. Okay, so just be clear on that. We're still following the whatever the policies are in each particular program. Okay. Okay, and then this is we talked about this a little bit, and Jenny's gonna give us some examples, send some examples too, but so to qualify for this interim policy, an agency will have to demonstrate that their delays are clearly attributed to these fires. And then Lewis has asked us to look into possibly including those other fires that he mentioned. So some of the issues that we know of could be site inaccessibility, wildfire damage, labor or material disruptions, right of way or design delays attributable to utility replacement or permit approvals. And then the agency requesting to qualify under the timely use of funds policy needs to be as specific as possible with the reasons for the delay. And this is not really any different than what we normally do if you ask for a time extension. But if you are asking for to be included within this interim policy, then you need to make sure you're tying it directly to the fires and why. Any comments on that? I see Prashant.
Yeah, hello. So the question is, when we make the request to Caltrans, there is a particular form we use?
Prashant, I can't hear you. Can you speak up a little bit?
Okay. Can you guys hear me? No?
A little bit.
Hello?
Maybe it's just
That-
another way.
Sean,
Okay, that's
that-
better.
That is better.
Yeah.
Okay, so when we make the extension request, there are some forms that we use in this particular case, which might not fit any of the forms that the established forms. Can we do the request through an email, or how do we do the request to Caltrans for processing?
So I don't know. How do people do the COVID ones? Was there?
Yeah, Prashant, that's a good question. So obviously, this policy is still draft and we're talking with you all, I would say a next step that's important for the context of this conversation is when we get this draft through our executive director, then we start working with Caltrans to be preparing to ultimately, because it's your Caltrans district office, whether it's a locally implemented project or if it's on system, that the agencies on the call with us today would be submitting your time extension requests for. So I don't know that we were considering a specific form for this interim timely use of funds policy. What you would want to do if your request is tied to an impact that is outlined in this interim policy, you would be basically justifying your larger ask through the normal process with Caltrans in line with this interim timely use of funds policy. So you'll have to forgive me because a lot of us on the commission side are not intimately familiar with the paperwork that goes from local agencies to Caltrans district offices that kind of percolates up to a time extension request on a commission agenda. But Caltrans will absolutely be aware, District 7, District 8, District 12 will be aware that this policy is valid. And I would, like right now, to respond to you, I would say through your justification of any additional time that you would need when you do like a normal time extension, you would tie it directly to this policy, and then the amount of time you're requesting would be considered because it's applicable to this. I don't know that that's as straightforward as
Yeah.
maybe what you were asking, but
Let me ask Lewis or maybe Shelley, someone that, did you submit anything different for COVID or what? Do you know, Lewis?
I don't think so. I think we just use a standard timely
Okay.
extension form. But we did get scrutinized more heavily
Yeah.
on the request, and I mean I think that's appropriate to reduce abuse. So
Okay,
yeah.
so it'll probably be something like that. What is that hand doing?
Jenny added, yeah, same form, but had to mention COVID for the delay.
Okay.
And Shelley agreed with Lewis.
Okay, so thank you, Prashant, for that. We will, once we get get it nailed down, then we can work with Caltrans on giving all of you specific instructions. Okay. Anything else here?
We have a few other hands raised.
Okay.
Marco, go ahead.
Hi, everyone. Marco, LADOT. With regards to the policy, would it be applied retroactively to projects that we've already received extensions and allocations? These would be recent projects.
Yes, but we're getting there.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
They may have had the same question as Marco. I don't see any other hands raised or comments come in.
Okay. And we can go to the next slide. Okay, so, whoops. Didn't we already talk about this one?
we had a slide earlier where we outlined the fires. I think this is just.
No, we did talk about this one.
Did we?
Yeah, I read this one. Let's go to the next one. Okay. So the following provisions would be effective immediately after commission adoption. Like I said, that would be at the June commission meeting. The allocation deadline for projects impacted by the emergency and programmed in fiscal year 24-25 is extended from June 2025 to the December 2025 commission meeting. So instead of having to come in by June, by the end of the fiscal year, if that's where your project is programmed, you have an extra 6 months just off the bat till December. So that's kind of the first line of provisions. Any comments on this? Is there general support for this? I'm assuming, okay, Prashant?
Yeah, thank you. Prashant from City of LA. So we have a scenario where we need extension for expenditure.
Prashant, I apologize. I think we can hear you, but the volume is very low and we have it turned up all the way in this conference room. So
Yeah, can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Well,
yes, much better.
okay, I'm speaking more closer to the microphone. I see on the screen that it's an allocation deadline. We also have a few requests for expenditure deadlines too. So does it applies for expenditure deadline? That would be great.
We're getting there too.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Prashant.
Actually, Prashant, hold that thought, okay? Because yeah, we might have to come back to your comment. Okay,
Nothing else has come in.
okay. Okay, so I'm assuming there is support for this. If there's not, somebody say something, or we will assume that this is supported by the group. Okay, thank you. Next, Alika. Okay, so this is on contract award. So when you receive construction allocation, I think in all of our programs, you have you have 6 months to award your contract. And if you don't, you need a time extension. So we will automatically move that to 12 for the duration of the policy. And this is this extension is retroactive and includes allocations approved at the January, March, May, and June 2025 commission meetings. Okay, so six more months for contract award. Any comments?
I'll give it another few seconds, but I'm not seeing anything come in. Oh, Lewis, go ahead.
Sorry, just will this project, sorry, I had to step away for a minute. I'm reading this right now. Are we still limited to the maximum 20 months? Because this sounds like it's a extension to 12 months automatically, but can we request more?
Or contract award?
Yeah.
So you could have requested. So are you talking about at time of construction allocation, can you request more?
Yeah.
Well, I think you can do that anyway.
Okay.
But
Well, yes and no. So Lewis, I think I'm gonna just create an example of what you might be asking. So let's say we're gonna allocate in June, since we haven't passed June, and you need beyond 12 months to execute the contract. So what you're asking is, would we be agreeable to allowing more than 12 months at the time of allocation, which would also still preserve your opportunity to seek like a time extension for contract award? Is that your question?
Yeah.
I think, I mean, we can consider that. I think the idea here was that automatically 12 months would be granted, so there would not need to be a justification to go from 6 to 12. And that if additional time is still necessary, that we would ask agencies to use the formal timely use of funds policy, which is to request a time extension. And I think, I don't know what the limit on that additional time is off the top of my head, but I think the hope is that if you're RTL and you're seeking an allocation, that that the 12 months would be good. And then if additional time is needed as post allocation, you would just seek a time extension.
Okay.
So Louis, you'll see as we go along that we're gonna recommend that you can have 20 months time extension for contract awards. So you basically have the 12 months and then another 20 months. Are you thinking that that's not sufficient, or are you suggesting something else?
No, I think that sounds fine to me.
Okay, thank you. And I think Marcelino? Somebody else had their.
Marcelino had his hand raised, but Alika, I thought I saw a question come through that was typed in.
Yeah, so we have one comment from Diego asking what is being used at this time to determine if a project is affected by the fires in order to qualify for the extension. Some past events have shown that a project may show the impact of an event at a later date.
Say that last part again, Alika.
Diego stated, some past events have shown that a project may show the impact of an event at a later date.
So, Marcelino, are you saying that, and you can come off mute if you want to explain it, that you would request an extension prior to knowing that you need one, just in case? Is that what you're saying, kind of?
No,
Diego.
no, what I'm saying is that sometimes, I mean, at this time, we don't show any impacts due to the fires, but I've seen in past cases where, everything looks good and then all of a sudden something occurs. I can't come up with an example, but then at that point you see that, oh, this is what this affected. The event that happened, I don't know, 8 months ago is now showing the effect on this project, 8 months later.
Diego, let me try to answer this because I think I know what you're saying. So the start date for this could vary depending on which declared wildfires we end up including in this policy. So that would be kind of the start of when impacts to fires would be justifiable. And if the agency that you represent is not currently challenged by any delivery issues, you'll see, I think a little bit later on the slides, we're going to talk about like a sunset for this type of policy. And we're hoping that we can understand if, even though the fires that we're talking about occurred 6 months ago, you'll see that this timely use of funds policy could last for several years, which I think would address what you're asking, which is if you don't even know that a project is impacted by, let's just say the Palisades fire, for example, for 2 more years, that would still be covered under this interim timely use of funds policy. So you don't need to seek it now, but when you need it, if you can tie the impact back to those fires and this timely use of funds policy is still valid, you would absolutely be able to access the additional time.
Okay, thanks. It does, yes. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Louis, did you have anything you wanted to add to that?
I was going to provide an example, but I think Matthew covered it.
Okay.
And I know there was a comment referring to Marcelino and somebody else had a similar comment.
They wanted to come, they said they have something different.
Hello, can you hear me? Hi.
Yeah, hey Marcelino.
Hey, hi everyone. Marcelino Asensio, City of LA. I just wanted to make sure I understood. So specifically about my project, I requested a 12-month extension to award, right? And so we've noticed some impacts of the fire. Specifically, our bids have been coming back substantially higher, as a result of labor shortages for rebuilding from the fire, resources within the city that were deployed. So we've had some direct impacts from the fire. So my understanding is, we would qualify for an additional 20-month extension to award automatically. Did I hear that correctly?
Well, you would still have to submit for the time extension. But instead of a 12-month time extension, you could get a 20-month time extension. And that's on the next slide. So you would add the up to giving you 12 months instead of 6 would be automatic, but then if you need more than that, you still follow the normal time extension process, but you can request more time than what we have now.
Okay, got it. Thank you. I just wanted to
Okay.
clarify that. Thank you.
And actually, Marcelino, I appreciate what you're saying, and I'm kind of thinking about it, and I just want to make sure, because it does sound like you have a specific project in mind. Can you confirm, when you said you were given 12 months for contract award, was that at the time you allocated the project, or was that a time extension that you requested already?
That was a time extension I requested already previously.
Okay, so in that instance, if you were given 12 months, you would be eligible to get an extra 8 by this 20-month allowance that Lori just described. If you needed additional than 8 more months, then we would need to be considering like an additional time extension. So that 8-month difference between 12 and 20 would, we might need to do like
We do have some.
we do,
Yeah.
okay. Lori just said we'll be
Yeah.
covering that.
Yeah. Do you see anything else, Aliga? I don't see anybody, do you? Oh,
let's-
George?
Yeah, we have George, but before I move on to George, I
Okay.
just wanted to confirm with Michael, because I know he had initially included something in the chat, but Michael added to the earlier comment, we are not yet in construction allocation phase. We would be seeking that in July. Michael, did you want to elaborate? Oh, there we go. Go ahead.
Yeah, Marcelino speaks for the project. He's project managing, so I'm just really just trying to support him and make sure I understand clearly. So he's going to be the decision maker and the lead on this, but I just want to understand. So currently, as I understand it, we're just prior to our construction allocation phase. I think the last phase allocation is that we're in is design right of way, and that was set to I think our deadline for that is July, so that's when we were expecting to seek the construction allocation. So
Michael, deadline for what?
to seek our construction allocation, I
Okay.
believe. Now, again, I'm not, I don't mean to speak for
Okay.
Marcelino. I'm just trying to understand.
Uh-huh.
So I hear two things. I hear that number one, we may have, if we only requested a 12-month time extension, sort of under the normal course of business, we may have an additional 8 months available to seek under the existing phase. So maybe that's the case, but then I guess I'm trying to understand, like for our scenario, what we're here to discuss today, how does that apply?
So
Exactly.
I think, so we haven't gotten there yet, because
Okay.
I think what you're asking is that you need more time to complete some of your pre-construction components before you get your construction allocation. Is that what you're
Well,
saying?
it's the same project that Marcelino just
Yeah.
referenced that are the elevated bids in the post-fire environment would be basically we'd be seeking more time to either identify additional funding or seek to potentially rebid the project. But those are decisions ahead of us. The main thing is that I'm trying to understand how this new policy would sort of apply to us like in the moment we're at within the phasing.
Well, what moment are you at, though?
I think well, Marcelino, you can maybe jump in, but I think we're at the end. We're like towards the end of our current allotted time in the right-of-way phase and about to seek construction allocation, but we're not yet in construction allocation, if I have that correct.
Yeah, that's correct, Michael.
So Lori, I want to jump in really quick. So Michael, it sounds like this project has been in the works for a while, and what you're experiencing is attributable to the wildfires because of the bid environment. But if you currently have a deadline that's nearing, I would suggest, and I'm guessing you might have already reached out to us about this specifically, but I'll just say, if there are specific projects that any of you, are worried about because time is, deadlines are nearing, I would suggest it might be appropriate for us to have a separate conversation about specific projects that have deadlines that are like rapidly approaching, so we can make sure we're understanding, the context of your specific project. And, and then that would help us understand whether or not this policy is applicable. Because I think the example is a good one. It's a project that, has been a long time coming. But I want to make sure we're giving you the best information, since it does sound like you guys have a deadline on the very near horizon. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's correct. Yeah, go ahead.
We'll follow up. We'll follow up on the side via email just for very specific direct questions. I appreciate you entertaining this, but yeah, there's some specific things I think we just need to flesh out. That we don't need to take everyone's time. So thank you.
no,
Well,
Marcelino, it's important. I mean, these are examples that I don't know that's why we wanted to have this call, because we are not aware of every challenge that could be experienced for this reason. So it is important to bring those examples up. I want to make sure that we're giving your agency with this particular project the attention it needs, since you did specifically say there is a deadline near that's very close. So I appreciate the example. I think it gives us a lot more to think about.
George?
Oh, George Huang from City of LA. Can you hear me?
Uh-huh.
Okay. I kind of have a two-part question. So for projects that were received the construction allocation like in the March or January CTC meeting, will that 12-month extension will the agency be informed automatically that they have that additional 6 months, or is there any kind of additional request or that needs to be made to confirm that?
So it is retroactive. So when did you get your allocation?
It was in the March.
Okay, yeah, that's included. So yeah, so you got, are you asking about, do you get the automatic 12 months to award?
Right, because it's already been awarded prior. So is there, before the provision comes out or the draft TUF comes out, so that do we just assume that if it's not awarded by next March of next year, we go ahead and just submit the timely use of funds through the normal business way?
If you don't get award in 12 months?
Right.
Yeah, yes.
Okay, got it. And then, sorry, one more part of the question is like for the June 2025 CTC meeting, when we put in the request, allocation request for construction, do we need to mention about the interim policy to get the 12 months on the application form?
Probably, but once we determine what the specific provisions will be, we will work with Caltrans to make sure everyone is clear on what they need to submit in their request.
Okay, understood. Thank you.
Thanks, George.
Okay, I think that was the last comment we had.
Okay. Okay, let's go to the next slide. Okay, so we talked about that you automatically will have more time for allocation, and then more time for contract award, and then for if you need a time extension for most of the programs, for the different types of time extensions, allocation, project expenditure, contract award, and project completion, the maximum amount of time is 12 months. Is that right for you guys' programs? Caleb, that you don't, they don't have 20 months for allocation, right? Okay, so the only exception to that is then for the active transportation program. For allocation, the maximum amount of time is 20 months. So all of these specific time extension types for all of the programs that this timely use of funds policy is covering, these will be increased to 20 months. So instead of asking for the 12, you can ask for the 20 months. Marco?
Hi, Marco Arroyo, LADOT.
Uh-huh.
So for the ATP projects that we were previously allowed allocation extensions for 20 months, will that be increased as well, or is there a plan to increase those?
Well, it's not on this, but do you think it needs to be? And, you know, talk about why.
Yes, I believe so, because I ultimately whenever we start shifting schedules, especially in the early phases, like in pre-construction, it pushes the entire schedule out. So if the impacts begin early on in the project development, then everything, including the construction phase, will shift out. So I think allowing possibly 28 to 32 months of allocation extensions would really support keeping the schedules in line with each other.
Okay, so Marco, you're saying for an ATP project, if you're getting backed up in your pre-con phases, then and you already can get a 20-month time extension for allocation, you're saying that you're gonna need more.
Correct.
Okay.
Especially considering this new policy that would allow us 20-month extensions for expenditures. That will only increase the delays further on in the project.
Okay, so Marco, do you think that, so we did say in the beginning that we could look at individual cases.
Yes.
Do you think that that would be adequate, or do you think that particularly in LA that the impacts are going to be broader and it would be better to have it included in the policy?
I believe it'd be better to have it included in the policy, just because I do foresee the impacts stretching quite a bit.
Okay.
And again,
Go ahead.
I would you know, I would obviously you guys would make the decision in terms of how long we would go, but since we went from 12 to 20, you know, I would recommend 20 to 32 if that's possible. But again, we can also provide more justification if necessary.
Okay, so do you think that this is an ATP issue in particular?
Yes.
Okay, and then let me ask you another question. If say we were to say 28 months for everything, then well, 28 months for allocation, then if I think everything would have to be increased then.
That's a concern we have as well, because with the current policy, whenever we receive extensions for construction allocation, we struggle even with the expenditure extension to have our PAD and PS&E deadlines match up with our allocation deadline for construction.
Okay.
So if you know, that would be something that would be great if we can somehow be able to shift those expenditure deadlines for the pre-construction phases to align properly with our allocation for construction requirements.
Okay, Marco, do you work for Carlos?
Yes.
Okay, This is, I think this is what he was explaining to me yesterday, so, okay, yeah, so we might have to come back to you.
Okay.
But Lewis has his hand up. Lewis?
Yeah, I kind of want to back Marco on his request too. So I'm going to use a very specific example, not
Okay,
not with ATP,
okay,
TRCP, SB1, any of these cases when we're trying to do something with energy projects, when charging for buses. And I've used this example quite a few times because we've been experiencing it since 2020. And there's, for us, we've seen a huge shortage in transformers. And I think right now there's like at minimum a 2.5 year delay on getting a transformer. Um, with the Palisades fire and the Eden fire just having vast destruction in populated areas, I think that's going to worsen over time. So there's going to be these instances where 20 months may not be sufficient because we're just waiting for one thing to do something, to install something. And this is a very specific case, but it's one of those issues where I think statewide we're going to see that impact across the board because we're seeing that delay right now nationally already, and I
Okay.
can see a potential for them to prioritize the certain, I don't know how to call them, devices, utility needs, right, for specific areas.
Okay.
I don't have a good time like range that would be reasonable, but I want to make the commission aware that this is going to be something that probably come down the line because we're already experiencing it. We just got our electric chargers installed, and those transformers took us almost 3 years to get. Thanks.
And this is related directly to the fires.
I would say it was before the fires. It's going to get worse and probably by the fires.
Okay. This is a policy about the fires.
Yeah.
Not saying it's not a problem, Lewis, but just remember that, okay.
Yeah, I know it's a policy about the
Okay.
fires, but there are supply chain issues that were there before the fires. I can see that supply chain issue getting worse because of the fires. That's what I'm trying to argue.
Okay, okay. Okay, so, and, Matthew had to leave for a second, so I wanna make sure he hears, because at first, Marco was talking about, needing more time, he was talking about ATP specifically, but Lewis is saying that he thinks that, they need more time for everything on
So-
all of the programs.
More than 20 months for
Yes.
each of the milestones on the screen.
I wouldn't say more than 20 months for, in our cases, probably allocation wouldn't, more than 20 months probably wouldn't be needed. I think it would be more so
Okay.
on the construction elements.
Okay, so let me think through this really quick because I know at the time of allocation, additional time is already allowed to be requested for project expenditure, contract award, and project completion. And we've now talked about how up to 12 months would automatically be given for contract award, and then an additional 20-month time extension could be requested. Right now, and I'm thinking of my executive team, with project expenditure and project completion, let's say you get a construction allocation. And traditionally, I think it's like 36 months to complete the project. And then there's like, I don't know, 180 days additional time to close out the contract expenditures. So we already would allow, if you already are aware upfront that you need more than, let's use 36 months as that example. If you need 48 months or you need 60 months, we already entertain that time additional at allocation with justification. And so are you talking very specific about if allocation's already occurred and project completion is on the horizon and you need a time extension and 20 months would not be enough? That's what you're asking specifically, Lewis?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and it kind of goes back to the last
Sure.
discussion we had that some of this we won't know until
Yeah,
maybe
no,
a year out.
I get it. So I know you brought up TIRCP, and TIRCP is kind of its own beast and is not included here. But if we're talking about the program specific to here and 20 months for these milestones through the form of a time extension is, let's not say not realistic, but like not even remotely realistic. We would probably want an example of why more than 20 months at a time of extension would be necessary, because we were hoping that 20 months would be satisfactory, but if everyone on here does not believe so, then Lori and I will just have to do a little bit of work through the justification you can all provide that 20 months would be extended as the standard within this timely use of fund, this interim timely use of funds. I don't want to say we were thinking we were already being generous with 20. Obviously, like we want to be very sensitive to ensuring that projects are being delivered in reasonable fashion with what you all have access to. But maybe the last thing I'll say is if we do extend it beyond 20 months, I mean, we're talking at the time of time extension there, and you're talking about unknowns. We're trying to tie it back to justification and examples, and I think we need a little bit more of that before we could ask our executive team to consider more than 20 months as a standard cutoff. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and Matthew, so you were out when that, so because we started with the H, and I knew this was gonna come up on the
Okay.
ADP because
sorry,
we
I
already
messed up.
allow the allocation. We already allow 20 months in allocation, so Marco asked, that's not, he's saying that doesn't
That's
do
not
anything,
doing
yeah,
anything.
so,
Okay.
and so I figured that would come up at each. But, then, you know, it kind of expanded, so.
Well, let us consider, you know, let us consider this a little bit and we can come back with, you know, a response or additional time in the form of the draft policy.
Sounds good. And if you need an example, we have one that we've been trying to deal with since 2018, and
Okay.
we literally just got it running, like I think maybe a couple months ago. It's kind of crazy.
Okay. No, I appreciate it.
And Marco, I saw your hand was up for a minute and then you put it down. Did you?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. No, yeah, I was just gonna go back to the fact that the current policy already allows for 20
Yeah.
months for allocation.
Yeah.
So that was my question, whether or not that would be increased as well.
Yeah, but not all.
Yeah, well, we will talk about that, cause yeah,
we can.
it's that the 20 months for allocation in ATP is a bit of an anomaly.
We have a few other hands raised.
Okay.
Diane, go ahead.
Yeah, hi, this is Diane. I work with Marco on the ATP projects for the city of Los Angeles. And I just wanted to chime in. The issues that we're having is the compounded effects of prior phases, like Marco said. We have projects still in design and development, and with the policy allowing us to have the 20-month extensions, what's happening is it's compounding so that when we get to construction phase, the 20 months is eaten up by the extensions approved in the prior phases. So
Yeah.
for instance, we currently have a project where we have received extensions in the design and development phases, but our construction extension only cuts short the previous approvals that we received for design. So for instance, our PSNE phase will expire or will lapse rather in June of 2027, not taking into account the additional 12 months that we would be allowed to request for expenditure. But now our construction allocation deadline puts us in February of 2027, so cut short of the extension that we'd already been granted.
Yeah.
So I don't know if a good way of looking at this is maybe to reset the timely use of fund deadline start dates of the future phases, because that's the problem that we're having. Those dates are set, and so we're trying to add additional months to those dates that have already been set, when those actually get pushed out because of previous phases being extended.
Okay, somebody else may understand this better than me, but can you explain reset the timely use of fund start dates on the future phases?
Well, what I'm saying is, right, our timely use of funds deadlines are set based on the fiscal years that the funds are set for, right? And that's already set. And so that's what we're working off of when we're saying extend the allocation date, or so.
So she's talking about reprogramming.
I'm not talking about reprogramming. I'm
No,
just
I think
thinking of another way to look at this.
They're already on if they're already on, Diane, if what you're saying is if you're already on the clock and your clock is based on pre-interim timely use of funds policy, what you're wondering is if those clocks can be reset to align to this policy when those projects are subject to this policy. Is that what you're asking?
Well, because I think that I hear that you're grappling with, okay, 20 months, 32 months, that seems like a lot, and you didn't think that the commission would go for such large extensions. But the issue is that we're seeing that the phasing is starting to overlap as we extend the and so if there's another way to look at it so that they would be comfortable in understanding our needs.
Okay.
I think I'm understanding, Diane. I think.
But maybe just a different way of looking at it, or not.
No. I appreciate it. And we.
Anya, are you?
Yeah, I think
Maybe you can
I think she's saying that, like,
speak up.
in later phases, they have to request a time extension just to accommodate for previous phase. So they can't even request a time extension for any delays in that future phase because they've already requested it to just make up the schedule that's been set behind from previous phases.
Yes.
Yeah,
That's what I'm hearing.
Ideally, this would address later phases, like if there are delays on an earlier phase and then that phase is, in design and you have construction funds. Yeah, okay.
So she's talking about adjusting a schedule to just accommodate the new timeline for previous phases and then still having an open time extension for an actual delay in that future phase.
Yes, I thought this already kind of addressed that. I thought it would preserve their ability to seek.
Right.
Yeah, Diane, let us kick that around because
Yeah.
I think maybe the reason we're confused, and I appreciate you even bringing this up. I was kind of thinking this already achieves that. Like if you need additional time on a pre-construction phase and it is absolutely automatically going to delay your ability to get to, like, let's say right of way or construction. I was thinking this policy addresses that. It gives you it gives you a new opportunity to get the time you need for those later phases in delivery. But because if it doesn't do that, I think that's our intention. So we can let us think on that.
Thank you.
Thanks, Diane.
I know we had another hand raised and Telling, I think you also expressed that Pasadena has a similar question to Diana, so I'll go ahead and unmute. Go ahead.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I guess that's what I was kind of thinking as well. So, for example, for our project, we have 4 different allocations depending on the phase of the project. We have one for PA&ED, one for PSNE, one for right-of-way, and one for construction. We actually released our first RFP for the PA&ED the Monday before the fires broke out here in Altadena and Pasadena. So we had to significantly push that back, which means our entire project schedule is going to be affected. Kind of similar to what Diana was saying. I wasn't sure, or Diana was saying, I wasn't sure if this 20 months will be only for one phase or it's going to be throughout the project, because what basically happens is kind of like a chain and a reaction that if the first phase isn't completed, then all of them are gonna be falling behind. I think that's what Diane was trying to say as well, that if this is going to be like a overall extension, or if it's going to be per allocation that we're going to be having to request for extensions, or is each allocation going to be able to apply for a 20-month extension? I guess that would be great if that can be clarified, because that would be, for us, that's four allocations, so it would be a lot of time. But I mean, not that we need it, but just clarification would be great. Thank you.
Yeah, and this is just like it is now, that you have this for every phase. So, you know, you could be getting these time extensions on all 4 phases. So that I think that's why we were getting confused, because if you can apply the same, if you need 20 months, if you can apply it to every phase, then it should, we weren't sure why it was compressing then. Unless we're missing something. Okay, so.
Yeah, I'll just go back and say, I think I'm understanding it now. I think that this could be a situation in TSEP where we fund pre-construction phases as well as construction, and it can happen in ATP where we fund pre-construction and construction. And I'll just reiterate, our intention was that this policy would give you coverage for every phase that needs to be allocated and preserve the 20 months for each phase. But if we come back with something and you feel like it still doesn't address exactly what you're pinpointing, we're happy to, we're happy to have a separate conversation. Given, I know that there are projects in ATP that have everything from environmental to construction funded and needing to be allocated. We are absolutely wanting to preserve this special time use of funds policy for every phase that has to be allocated.
Louis? Yes, extension per phase. Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, there you go. I think what I'm getting out of discussion too is, would you automatically bump out the other phases? If an agency comes in asking for, say, pre-construction work, would you automatically push out the right-of-way construction, whatever following phases after that? Or would they have to come in with a separate request every single phase?
Well, Lori, do you have any thoughts? Because I think this is probably most applicable in ATP, and I wouldn't want to speak for you, but I'm thinking if they know that every phase is going to be delayed, it could be taken with one action and kick everything.
So, but that happens now, though. And so, Louis, what do you have to do now? Do you have to do it every?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's a separate request every single time. So my concern is that doing it all at once is great.
Yeah.
But if they lose that ability to come back later down the line to ask for that extension, they just lost that ability by doing a one blanket extension. Does that make sense?
No, yeah, it makes sense.
Yeah, I guess yeah, and the other issue I see is that if we made a change that it was automatic for all of them, that's kind of changing a whole process. Process that is standard for all of our programs, so I'd hesitate on that, but yeah.
Okay, well, something to think about then, because
Okay.
I think it for the agencies, it'd be nice to have it done, just automatically push things out. I don't want that to take away their ability to come back and ask for an extension later.
Okay, that part I don't understand what you're saying. If everything's automatically pushed out, you mean, but if it's an automatic time extension, because you asked for, okay, so if you ask for your allocation time extension, and I think everyone was saying, okay, then we need. If you're asking for allocation time extension, then it would need to be for expenditure, contract award, completion.
Yeah,
Okay. So then why would it, if it's automatic, then how would they lose the ability for a time extension?
because wouldn't that count as a time extension for each of those phases?
Yes,
So you can only come once, right?
yeah.
So then that it would use it up.
That would use up your chance to get the extension.
If let's just say it was design and they needed 20 months for allocation for design, and their right-of-way allocation was programmed in the subsequent year, and then their construction allocation was programmed in the subsequent year. If we applied a 20-month time extension to every programmed phase automatically, they wouldn't then on right-of-way after the 20 months delay, and on construction after the 20-month delay, not be able to come back and get a time extension if they have additional challenges getting through that additional 20 months, because they're still so focused on getting design completed. So I'm understanding, and I guess I know we have 30 minutes left. Go ahead.
Well, what's the difference between that and if it's automatic or if you ask for it? I don't understand. It's still,
Well, because they're not even, in the example I gave, they're still, I mean, I'm gonna use the phrase struggling to get through design. And they know that design is being granted a time extension for 20 months. So if we didn't automatically push out all later phases by 20 months, they would be expected to allocate right of way before their timely use of funds on design. So then they would request a 20-month time extension, but because they're still getting through design and they don't know if there are going to be additional impacts to when they get through right of way, and then when they get through construction, that additional automatic 20 months may not be enough, and they would not have an opportunity to get more time because they're still only exposed to the challenges trying to get through design. Does that?
but they only have 20 months. Okay, these are the kinds of conversations we get in with time extensions.
Yeah, no, it's
it
challenging.
Yeah, this might just be me, so I won't, subject everyone to my confusion, so.
No. I don't think it's confusing. I think I mean, I can understand that it is, but this is unique to projects where we have multiple phases funded. And I guess maybe I'll just say we on the CTC side probably need to kick this around a little bit more, because now we've heard from Lewis, we've heard from the city of LA. I think it was LA that Diane represented in Pasadena. So let us kick this idea around, because I think we obviously need to flesh through it a little bit more.
George?
Uh-oh. George, unfortunately, it might be a connection thing. You might
He
need
said
to log.
okay.
Oh, he said okay, okay. It sounds like your voice is sped up like Alvin and the Chipmunks.
Yes.
Randy,
I might need
translate.
you to log out and log back in, or you could even type in a comment if you prefer.
Okay, well, we'll move to the next one, but when George comes back on, if we need to go back, we will. Okay. Next slide. Okay, so these are amendments. So one-time extension amendment will be considered for projects with previously approved time extension, allowing the total extension period to be increased up to 20 months. So meaning if you had already asked for 12 months on something and it seems because of fire related issues, you're gonna need more, you can request an amendment up to the full 20. So you get an additional 8 months. Okay, and then the bullet says for a project with an approved 20-month time extension that expires between June 2025 and December 2025, an agency may request additional time beyond the 20 months if the need for additional time is directly attributable to these fires. Okay, I don't remember what this one means. Anya, help me out.
It's just that if, like, let's say they got 12 months and they got the amendment for the additional 8 months to get them to 20. If that's not enough time, they can speak to us directly and let us know how much time is needed because of the delay that's attributable to the fires.
Okay. Did everyone hear Anya? Okay. Any questions on this, on the amendments?
I'll give it a few more seconds here, but I'm not seeing anything at this point. We have one hand raised. Shelley, go ahead.
Okay, I'm thinking back to what Marcelino and Michael were saying, how they have an extension that expires in July. When would they request this time extension amendment for that additional 8 months? I guess they submit it in July before the extension expires.
Yes.
Okay.
Correct. If the paperwork is in before the deadline, that's been our standard process in a month where we don't have a commission meeting. As long as Caltrans has the request in hand, we will absolutely consider it on the commission meeting directly following the deadline.
Okay, super. Thank you.
Thanks, Shelley.
No other comments or hands raised.
Okay. The next slide is discussion, I think. And we've kind of been doing that. So let's go to the next one, Alika. Okay, so this was, so we were just gonna talk about if we should have an expiration date or not. Was that okay. Okay, so we were talking a little bit internally about if we should have a end date for the policy, which we wanted to talk a little bit about what people think would be a good end date. Staff will evaluate the continued need for this policy on a quarterly basis. And the provisions of the policy will remain in effect through project completion for all projects that have received approved extensions under this interim policy. Okay, comments on expirations. Marco?
I agree and believe that that third bullet point will accommodate the need for any expiration, right? Because that's going to basically allow the agencies to continue using this new policy for projects that were impacted originally by the fires. So I think that covers a lot of it, for at least for my understanding.
Okay,
We should have had that thing on past slide.
anyone else?
We have one comment in the chat from Diego saying, when will we know what the until date is in the first bullet?
So I think what, okay, is what Marco just said, is that does the third bullet cover the first two, so we don't need it? We don't need the first two?
Well, no, he's just saying it, the third bullet covers any concerns he may have with that
Okay.
expiration date.
Okay, got it.
Or
Okay,
that's what I heard.
yeah,
Yeah, so let me throw out what we were thinking, and this is, I mean, we didn't want to do this because we were hoping maybe the group could tell us how long they thought. I'm not going to say projects that are currently being delivered, but maybe future projects that have not even started to deliver would be impacted by these disruptions. And so we were originally tossing around, you know, should this sunset June 2028? Which means any project that is either already being delivered or will be delivered or start to be delivered before June 2028. Is that a practical, you know, sunset for this interim timely use of funds policy? Or are we thinking that's not reasonable? And the reason, okay, so we have Diego saying June 2028 sounds reasonable. And I want to maybe end my comment with, the only reason we need to apply a sunset date is because we have to explain to our commissioners that there would be some point, even though 2028 is 3 years away, but there would be some point where we would return back to the normal timely use of funds policy for projects that, you know, were impacted by these specific wildfires that we covered. And obviously, if we all know wildfires are not going away, if there is a new state declared emergency in, you know, the next year or 2 or 3, hopefully there isn't, but if there is, we obviously always retain the option of either prolonging this interim timely use of funds policy or even standing up a brand new one to address any other emergency events. So that's the reason we were intending to put a sunset date. We just wanted to make sure wherever we landed was reasonable given what you're all experiencing today.
And this is Marco Guilty. Again, I actually agree with Diego. I think that is pretty generous. And
Okay.
then, like I mentioned, the third bullet would assist us in for any of the projects that are being extended beyond that point.
Absolutely. We would consider that if a project needs to tap into this at any point in delivery, that becomes, you know, this policy would follow that project through the completion. So,
perfect.
So, but I know Shelley has had her hand raised.
Hello again. I would suggest the end of fiscal year 29, which is the last year of ATP cycle 7, for which the statewide component was adopted in December. And so it would cover all the projects that would have been programmed before the fires happened. And I think that would be even more generous than what you're proposing, but I don't know, anything could happen.
okay. Thank you, Shelley. Anybody else on this, because we have about 15 more minutes, and I wanted to go through our follow-ups to make sure that we don't forget about anything, and we can talk about our next steps on this. So anything else before we start our wrap up here?
We did receive one comment from Prashant stating we have an expenditure deadline due at the end of June of this year. How can we get an extension under the interim TUF during the June 2025 CTC meeting, considering extension requests to the CTC are past due for the June meeting?
It'll be retroactive. Did we say June, Alika, in our retroactive?
Let me go back.
I think it's in there. Okay, because I think it'll have to be June too, because it's too late. Yeah. I thought it was on there.
This slide. Oh, here we go.
Yeah, it says June. Okay. Yeah. See that, Prashant? Okay.
Oh, I hear the handwriting. Go ahead.
Yeah, you guys can hear me?
Yeah, well, almost.
Okay.
You're kind of,
Okay. So, yeah, we will submit.
now we can't hear you.
Okay. I'll
Rashad, yeah, you're still sounding quite faint.
Okay, I'll put it in the chat.
No, we can hear you now.
Hear you now, go ahead.
Okay, so I know usually the requests are due a few months before, so I guess we will turn as soon as possible, and then it's gonna be heard in the next upcoming CTC meeting whenever it can make it to the agenda, I guess.
Yeah, so they're probably already past deadline for June meeting, I would think. Yeah, probably long past. So you won't be able to do it for June, but it will be retroactive. Okay. Alika, but before we do that, I did want to show the contact information because I suspect people are going to have individual questions. So I want to make sure that everybody, and we can leave this up for a little bit. You probably already know all of your program managers, but here they are. So Matthew and I are the deputies, and then underneath me for this policy is the HEP. So you would contact directly Anya and Alika. And then for the SB1 programs under Matthew, it would be Naveen. For the SCCP, Beverly for TSEP, Lashar for LPP, competitive, and Kayla for LPP formula. Okay, so let's collectively, we may have to remember our follow-ups here. I started writing them down and then.
Lori, we have one more hand raised.
Okay, yes.
Anne, go ahead.
Yeah, just really quick. I don't know if I missed it or if it wasn't or if it was addressed, but we talked a lot about allocation extensions. What about expenditure extensions for phases that are currently expiring or lapsing this June? Has that been addressed?
It was. Do we need to go back to that slide?
Can you just, if you could just put it up really quick? I apologize for this.
Huh?
Number 4.
Is it this one that you're talking about or the amendment one?
The next.
Let me go to the next one. Is this what you were looking for, Diane?
So if our project phase lapses in June of 2025, would we have to ask for an extension or does it automatically extend?
You already have a time extension?
Correct.
Okay, you would have to ask for,
Another 8
an
months?
amendment, yeah.
Okay.
That's what we, okay, yeah. You need an amendment then.
Yeah.
Yeah, contact your program manager. For what project, what program are you talking about?
It's our ATP 5.
Okay.
So contact Anya.
Anya and Alika are your people. So we can go back to the contact one again.
I have that one.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, so follow-ups. What I started with was, consider including the other fires mentioned by Lewis. Okay, okay, and then, Southern California Edison issues. Jenny can provide us with some good examples of what they're seeing. Next I had Caltrans procedures that once we get the policy more finalized, then we can make sure we understand with Caltrans with the procedures and how this will be implemented. And then also another one was that along with Ventura and LA, consider Orange, Riverside. Nobody said anything about San Bernardino, but I'm assuming that they would wanna be included too.
The one fire that Lewis mentioned.
Okay, was the same, okay, okay. That's what I have before I stop, writing down, so maybe Kayla was taking good notes.
A couple more that I have are following up about considering more than 20 months for some of these extensions, especially allocation. Hopefully I got that one right. And then the issue that we need to talk about here internally at the commission of resetting the timely use of fund start dates for future phases and how they'll push everything out. So if we are gonna extend all phases at once or what, so
Okay.
we'll follow up on that. And policy expiration, just reporting back to stakeholders. That's all I have.
Okay. Did anybody have anything else?
We got a few comments in the chat. Vanessa added that yes, San Bernardino wants to be included. And then we have a few comments or questions really asking about this, the presentation and recording, if that's going to be shared.
Yeah, we can share it, although this, just make sure, we can put a watermark on this. I think you can do that on PowerPoints. Just to make sure everyone knows this was just draft, because based on our conversation today, some of those things will likely change.
Yeah, I think Anya made sure to make it clear that everything in this PowerPoint is a draft.
Okay. Anything else, Alika?
Let's see. Marco has his hand raised. Marco, go ahead.
Hi, so another thing would be whether or not our pre-construction phases would be aligned with our construction allocation deadline. So if we are shifting all the phases, that we kind of guarantee that our expenditure deadlines also shift, because I don't think that with the previous 12-month and now the current 20-month extensions, that if we shift everything, including the construction allocation, that we would be able to fully use all of the funding in the pre-construction phases.
Okay.
So,
Thank you, Mark. Yeah.
I don't know if that would be beyond how that would be beyond the 12 and the 20-month extensions.
Okay. Marco, can you send me an email?
Yes.
Okay. And
Yeah.
maybe I'll call you too. Okay. Um. Okay, so. Amongst our group here too, now we have to determine how, so we will need to consult our management. And so we want to bring this to the June meeting. What would be the best way to report back to them on?
You and I can bring this up.
Okay.
At deputies with Paul and Tanisha and give them a breakdown of the conversation.
Okay.
We can reconvene with our teams after that, and then for the group that's online with us, I would say we can hopefully report back on any updates based on what we talked about today. I would like to say by the end of next week, if not early the following week, and then obviously we'll have a draft policy that gets posted with the June CTC agenda, but that wouldn't go out until June 13th. So I think if we're in a position where we can maybe circulate something in draft form for your comments or additional suggestions, with the understanding that, you know, once it gets through Paul and Tanisha's review, our ability to make additional drastic changes becomes a little bit more limited, but I think we'll have a few more weeks to report back to this group and then give you an opportunity to think of some additional suggestions or comments or what have you before we have to lock this down before posting the June agenda on the 13th. So Lori and I can get started on this early next week. We'll have an audience with Paul and Tanisha, and then we'll loop our teams in accordingly.
Yeah, okay, and if you think of something else, so, Anya is kind of by default taking the lead on this a little bit, and me, because, Matthew's team, they are right in the middle of doing their staff recs on their competitive program, so I've been trying to kind of take on this to relieve them of that. So if you think of something, send it to me, at least me, but if you can think of it, Anya as well. Okay, I think any last questions, comments before we break? I will thank all of you, because this is exactly the kind of conversation that we wanted to have. This was extremely helpful for us, so we appreciate it.
Yeah, agreed. We appreciate it.
Yeah. Thank you. Bye.